So you remember, the head of department came in and said, "Look at this. It was the original ChatGPT." It was kind of just gibberish at the time. That was 3 years ago now, and now it's got to a point where I can't imagine anyone's actually writing code anymore.
I imagine now a QA person who's good and diligent is both essential and also probably in high demand.
They are the choke point. It's when it has to come into choke point, which is human. But they're being handed 10 times as much as they used to, but they're still expected to, in the same amount of time,
They must be livid.
fuming.
Welcome to the It's Not the End of the World podcast, everyday use cases for AI, where we have down-to-earth conversations with real people about how they're using these tools that are making waves in society. I'm joined today by Ben Kemp, who works in cybersecurity. He's a front-end developer. So front-end developer, we're trying to appeal to a broad range of people. So maybe you can just help us understand what a front-end developer does.
Okay, I guess we can split development into front end and back end. So back end will be your servers where all the data lives. And the front end will be client side, so whatever appears in the browser. So it's app development, basically what all the customer will see, or when you turn on Google Chrome and it pops up, everything that runs inside of Chrome would be considered front end development.
So you develop what people can see.
Absolutely, exactly. It's user interface.
Right. What's the difference between, I thought a UX designer was always designing the things that people see and that developers were working on the code. So what's the difference between a front-end developer and a UX designer?
So a designer will literally do that. They'll design it. They'll use software like Figma or Zeppelin, and they'll make, there's actually a significant amount of crossover. So you can make design tokens. So you can say pixel by pixel exactly what is going to be required. But for the actual creation of the code, that would be a developer. A designer will just use drawing software.
Okay. So you've got the UX designer who creates what people would ideally like to see. And then the UX designer hands that off, the blueprints, if you like, to the front-end developer, who then translates the plan, the UX design, into functional working interfaces. And then the back end developer. So if that's at the top, the UX designer, we come down to the front end developer, and then below that, there's a back end developer that's doing even more complicated coding based tasks. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. So the back end developer might have, or imagine if like a company has actual like software with sensor data, kind of what we're doing at the moment. A back end developer would collect all these streams, do all kind of database nonsense. I only really care about what the customer sees, exactly what is delivered to them, what they can click on, what data gets sent back.
Okay, got it. Okay, and so all right. So help me understand your day to day then. What does it look like?
Yeah, so day-to-day we work in sprints. That's like a 2-week session. So what will happen is just as you described before, you'll have the product owner and then the designers. The product owner will decide this is what we want to do on our next iteration of the platform. They'll then consult with the designers who will draw exactly what that looks like. And then they'll come to me and go, "This is what we want. Can you create some tickets?" So then, like I said, we work in sprints, like usually around 2 weeks. So what happens is you create these tickets about what job needs to be done, what the images look like. You get those from Figma or Zeppelin. Then after that, you have a session where you see how long each task is going to take, and you all sort of chip in with ideas, and it's called story pointing. So after the story points, then you go, everyone has an assigned number of story points per sprint. The sprint will start on a Monday, and you have till the following Friday, a week on that Friday, to get through all your story points. You'll have regular daily meetings where you talk about what you did yesterday, any blockers come up, any issues, but you'll be expected to work through those. So day to day, it is depending on what day that particular sprint is. I might be creating new tickets, I might be reviewing other people's codes, or I might be going through the tickets that have been assigned to me for that sprint.
Okay. And before we get into like how AI has affected your processes, let me ask you another question. You are working specifically in cybersecurity. Now, what you've just described is like makes complete sense to me if you are working for, let's say, a Google or a Facebook or some sort of, Airbnb. I can imagine these interfaces that I'm interfacing with and someone like you designing them for me. But I've just sort of imagined that cybersecurity would be much more about, I don't know, doing the back end stuff, basically. So how does a front
Absolutely.
end developer work within that space?
Imagine, okay, so the actual product itself will all be back end. The bit that we do, the sensors, that will all be like the technology in the hardware aspect. So what I do is just take all the information and try to translate it into a human readable way.
You're making that data readable for your stakeholders, essentially, like making it so that they can interpret it more clearly.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that one thing you touched on is that I think that front end development will be quite similar throughout each company, and that maybe some of the more, especially like intellectual property, will be something significant that people have developed in the back end. So yeah, quite a lot of mine, as you described, yeah, is a bit similar to what would happen at Google or Facebook. It is taking the information that is stored in the servers and making it in some sort of human readable form. But lots of things like usability. That's why we have like user experience and user interface is such a sort of in demand part of the industry, because usability isn't quite important. Things have to be quite clear. Amazon, you're only 4 clicks away from purchasing something, and it's got to look natural and feel. So there's a skill to it, but it is a skill that translates throughout different companies.
All right, cool. All right. Well, I feel like I've got a good sense of it. Thank you for that. That's a good overview. Well, now let's get to the meat and potatoes of the podcast, Ben. This is why
That's why I'm here, Bob.
That's why you're here. Okay, so AI then. So how is that affecting your day job?
It's completely changed it. Most code now is written via prompt. In joining the company, you can get a ChatGPT. If you get the professional version, it means that it doesn't train its language models on any of your work, so you can share absolutely anything with it. It's undetectable. Actually, you can notice it because there's some finer points, but in terms of the quantity of code that it can produce, that's what everyone's doing it. Everyone is doing it.
So you guys are using ChatGPT?
ChatGPT, and we use Claude as well.
And the company provides that for you, or you?
Company provides that. Yep. As soon as you start, they're like, okay, you can choose one or more. And I've also got a personal account with GitHub to use their GitHub Copilot. So GitHub now, it will now review your code. It can't do a full code review, but it can comment on it and provide that feedback.
Okay, so I feel like listeners will be familiar with ChatGPT and they'll be familiar with Claude. GitHub, though, might be a bit more specific. Can you explain what GitHub is?
Sure. So GitHub is like an online repository where all the code lives. And the way that the tech companies work is that you make a clone of that repository, and then you make a local copy of it, and then you'll check out what's called a branch, make some changes, and then you'll push that back into the code, get it reviewed. So you just review the changes, and it's where you have your teammates will review that code. If it goes well, it's merged back in.
I think I'm following. So I'm going to create some analogies. You can tell me if I'm right or wrong. So it sounds like GitHub is a bit like Google Drive. And within that Google Drive, you have your Google Docs, your various documents. And on the side, we also have our large language models. We have ChatGPT, we have Claude. And if I'm a writer, I would log into Google Drive in order to access the documents that my writing team have been creating. And then I can edit those documents, and I might use ChatGPT to help me write what I'm writing within those documents.
Yes, I like that. You've got Word documents, but imagine you have Microsoft Word as well. So you've got your Google Drive with all your documents in it. Then you'll get a copy of those, and you can download it to Microsoft Word. You'll open Microsoft Word with all its different pages. And what people will commonly do is Control-C, take the whole page, Control-V into ChatGPT, and then say, can you improve the writing on this? Can you making sure all the spellings are correct? Can you make it sound a bit more wistful, melancholic? And ChatGPT will go, coming right up. But with code.
Right. Okay, that's perfect. Okay, so you said that this is like completely transformed the way you're doing your job. I can't imagine it was an overnight transformation. So how long has it taken for, and we're going to get to how it's transformed your job, but I'm curious about just how long it's taken to get to wherever you are right now.
So when did the first one come out? 2022?
I thought 23 is what my gut tells me, but 22, 23, 3.5 was around
22,
then,
23. Yeah. So we used to do lunch and learn on Fridays. So lunch and learn on a Friday, the whole team gets together, um, and somebody has to show, oh, here's a new thing that I found. And then I absolutely remember the head of department came in and said, look at this. It was the original ChatGPT. It was gibberish at the time, but it could at least have a go. But yeah, that was 3 years ago now. And now it's got to a point where I can't imagine anyone's actually writing code anymore, unless you're a hardcore, love your trade. Again, it's one of those things. It's now like there are the people who are protesting by not using it, and in some respects, like if you did learn it yourself, it wouldn't get caught up in the issues of people are getting dumber because they are just getting ChatGPT to do their work, so that when you do get issues, there is no one with the skills to
Wait,
fix them.
are you saying that's the current state of affairs, or are you predicting that will be the state
Yeah.
of affairs in the future?
Yes, I said the current state of affairs. So we're struggling to hire people. So in the olden days, it used to be olden days, 6 months ago. It used to be you interview someone, and if that goes well, you go on to the take-home test. And the take-home test would be they give you some instructions, and they go create this app for me, and then you bring it to the next time. You'd submit it, they'd review it, just like you would a normal pull request. And then they'd bring you in for another interview, and you talk through any decisions that you made, any architectural, or why you chose certain tools. That is almost impossible now because someone might interview well, and you go, okay, go ahead and make me an app, or even under time conditions. And it's all ChatGPT. One of the things we talk about is that we're all experts now. It's very difficult to find out who's a good developer and who's just using ChatGPT.
Okay. Well, I don't see the problem there because surely you just need to improve your tests and change the way that workflows work. And surely there's like a different level. There must be a point at which it bottoms out, and one can't just use ChatGPT to do the coding task.
So it is interesting. So things like we're moving incredibly quickly because of ChatGPT. The sheer quantity of code is amazing. Like you can do in 3 hours what would used to take a week to do.
When you say we're moving incredibly quickly, are you talking about society? Or are you talking about
Yes, the tech companies. The amount of code that you can produce is ridiculous compared to what it used to be. 10 times as much code.
So are you guys working much faster now? Is that what's happening?
Absolutely. Yes, we're moving much faster, but there are some caveats to that. So number one, I know that people are submitting code that they don't know how it works. Code review used to be important because it used to be a way of gauging what the person who you're reviewing understood. And you could actually chat with them, and you could go, oh, I can see you could upskill them just on reviews. Now it's code that they haven't produced that they might not understand, and reviewing it wouldn't really help because it's not their understanding anyway. So you get to a point now where you still need to do code reviews. Code has to be reviewed, but it's less meaningful. So we're actually getting to a point now of the amount of quantity that people are producing has increased, but who's reviewing it? You need AI now to review code. So that's where GitHub Copilots come in. So GitHub, the big repository, they've provided a software now where for a fee you can get it to review your code. It's not perfect, but you can. But it's another tool. So it's another tool. You got a reviewing tool. You've got the producing tool. We are just sort of ushering around AI produced code at the moment.
It sounds like it's evolving. It sounds what I'm hearing is like I'm like, okay, new technologies come, and this specific job class is just evolving. This industry is trying to figure out how do the new workflows work, because presumably it must be useful. Otherwise, people wouldn't just be allowing this to take place.
Absolutely, no, it's fantastic. So a lot of the work now is refining prompts. There's things like all code must be tested. So you write the code, and then you write a testing suite to go along with it. This is what happens when it fails. This is what happens when it's failed because you don't have authorization. This is what happens when it fails because you don't have an internet connection. You used to have to do that, like repetitive tasks. With a well-refined prompt that you can just keep in your notes, at the end of writing some code, or actually you could do this at the beginning.
Yeah. Okay. So again, so you're sort of describing some of these processes that how your industry and the way that you do your job is evolving to bring this in. I'm curious about another element of this. How are your job expectations changing? You know, has your industry evolved to the point where they're realizing, oh, we actually need 5 developers, not 10, or we actually want Ben to produce 10 times as much in his working week than he did before?
We are absolutely at the stage where there's a lot of recalibration going on. I think that certainly for lower level developers, it's that work is drying up. I can't imagine why it wouldn't be, because you don't need someone to. That's exactly what ChatGPT can do. It can work under instruction. It can do exactly what you want. Um, QA, quality and assurance. That's even more important now, specifically because we are shipping so much more code that the ability to go through it, and their job is like, human, try to break this code. And that's becoming much, much more important.
That's interesting. So I'm imagining also the value of different types of jobs are changing, right? I imagine now a QA person who's good and diligent is both essential and also probably in high demand.
Yeah, I should imagine so. Yeah, the direction it's going in is we're all going to be shipping AI code, but on top of that, you need so many layers of protection and testing to make sure that it's right. So yeah, I think that's security and tightness of your code written by AI. So it's AI on top of AI.
So those QA people are just going to be absolutely
Super busy. And at the moment, they are the choke point. It's when it has to come at choke point, which is human.
right.
And QA is the last line of, if a bug gets past QA and it gets into the platform, that's a disaster. If you're getting users then complaining about it, that's a real problem.
Yeah.
So their job is just intensely, but they're being handed, oh, we've changed enormous, huge amounts of apps, like 10 times as much as they used to, but they're still expected to,
They
in
must,
the same amount of time.
they must be livid. I
Yeah, fuming.
I want to ask you, are you noticing is part of the realignment within your industry also in pay?
Good question, because I don't know that yet. And my experience of this happening is literally the point at which uh, LLM generated code is good enough. I don't think that the market has caught up with it yet. I think that's going to be quite as quite a common thing. So, for instance, my job, I think the amount that a developer is expected to produce versus the amount that a developer can actually produce if they're working as hard as hasn't quite aligned yet. So I think that you can literally work at 30% capacity, but still produce as much work that that nobody else would notice. And I think that's what's happening as well.
So this technological pebble has dropped into the pond and the ripples are still reverberating across it.
So yeah, and I think that I don't think we'll ever get to a recalibrated point. There are always people coming into the market because the barriers to entry are so low now. Like you just need a little LLM model, and then people have got their own product.
Yeah, it sounds like you're at an unprecedented time of change in your industry.
And it's not going to change. I don't see it ever getting back to a point where we're like, oh, we're at stasis, or this is what an expert looks like. I suppose it was always true of tech. You could be really proficient in this language, and then something comes out on the market. Your language is now completely defunct, and your skills there are now completely worthless. That is happening so much for so much of development. The skills that you once made you a good developer aren't required anymore.
Well, it's right. Well, that's why the QA people there, and your industry requires. I mean, so far, there needs to be humans in the loop. It strikes me every industry, and it sounds like the vanguard are the developers who are adopting this new technology the quickest, the most rapidly, and yet they are also trying to figure out how their industry recalibrates because of this new technology. But I do have a question in relation to that. In where I work, there was a period of time between 2022 and 2020. It was probably end of 2023, maybe 2024, where I kind of came out of the LLM closet and said, I'm using this, and I really think that we all need to be using this at work, right? It was like a dirty secret that I might be checking scripts or whatever using it. So has that ever been the case in your line of work? Is it still the case? Are there people
Yes,
in senior levels who just don't get it, who are not kind of cottoning on to the fact that all the junior people are using it?
there are purists. There's an absolute community of people who just don't want to do it, don't want computers to do it. They share their memes with me on the company Slack. You're absolutely right. Like, it is a dirty secret. It is a dirty, like, when you get called up on, like, hey, what did you mean when you wrote this? And like, I didn't write that. I have no idea what that means. But yeah, so you still can't completely admit, like, I have no idea what I've produced here or what has been produced. You can't, like, yeah, I still wouldn't be totally comfortable going, I have no idea AI wrote that, because in the end, it's like, well, even if it did write that, you've got to be responsible for it.
This is so interesting. This is the recalibration of just expectations. Okay, so there's two things I want to share with you that came up in my last podcast with my boss Jez, that I think are relevant here. First piece was directly relevant to what you're talking about. Was he was telling me that for the first time in his career, 20 years of running the business, he's had employees sending him direct quotes from his employment contract in order to argue their rights. And he said that's never happened before. But in this last year, all of a sudden, people are quoting the employment contract back at him. The part I thought was really hilarious about that was that no one would ever admit that they didn't read the employment contract before signing it. But
Right.
evidently, no one was reading it. And now all of a sudden, everyone's supposedly an expert on their employment contract. But he's had reams and reams of employees come through the company who have never, ever quoted anything from the employment contract back at him. So there's this kind of weird position where we're in, where he's saying to himself, okay, well, this is weird. This is obviously people are using the LLMs to do that.
Yeah.
But no one's admitting that they're using an LLM to explore the contract, which
Maybe
is
you're right. Like, because steroids in professional sports. From what I understand, it is completely common. It is so much more because all you got to do is not get caught, and the benefits to using and not being caught far outweighs what happens if you get caught. Like the chance of you being caught. So why wouldn't you? Why? It'd be far more lucrative for me to find this tool and just pretend that it's me.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that obviously professional sports has a tangible philosophical reason that people don't cheat. We all have agreed kind of principles, but work is a capitalistic enterprise, and the quickest, most effective way to produce the work is the one that wins. Right, unless you need some sort of regulation. Regulations exist in order to stop negative outcomes, but using a chatbot to produce code or for a worker to read their contract seems like a no-brainer as far as I'm concerned. The interesting part comes from like why people are lying about it.
Well, because it is cheating. It's cheating. It doesn't. It feels, and that's how finding. So my cousins have just started uni. So I was talking to an 18-year-old about what, like, how does that work anymore? What, like, why would you go to university? What could you possibly, like, every essay you've ever needed, do it. You can get to write in 5 seconds. You can absolutely distill everything. What is then what is the point?
Yeah.
What
Okay.
is
So it's cheating when writing an essay that is designed to help you learn in order to pass a test that is testing your ability to write the essay. But when you're building a company and you need to build a website for your company, and you can use a chatbot to build the website so that customers can come to the shop window and buy your product, how is that cheating?
But I suppose that all of it is you're the whole time trying to augment yourself, and you're trying to pretend that the work is done by a chatbot is work that's been done by you, and you'll do that in the university, getting it to write your exams and to improve that, and you'll signal to other people that you're more impressive or capable than you actually are, and you'll then so you will it's more lucrative. You will get a better job.
I see that analogy between sports and this kind of environment that we're living in right now. And I guess the point I'm trying to make is that, but we just need to recalibrate. Like these tools are here, and actually, like when you get an employment contract, bloody put it through ChatGPT and get it to put it into layman's terms so you can understand it, because that's what we should be doing in this new world. And stop like banging people over the head and telling them that they're getting brain rot and getting stupider because they are using a chatbot to read the contract that they never took the time to read in the first place because they didn't have the skills to understand it.
Yeah, so there is that. But yeah, but we, more and more we are. It is like an information economy. It's just what gets produced, ostensibly by you. It's quite weird that we are now at a point where I'd say that like there's no benefit to admitting to it, because I think that if you did, say we both did some work and you admitted to, like, I actually got AI to write this, and I go, oh, I wrote this code, which is as good as yours, but I didn't get AI to help me, and it looks like, oh, imagine Ben plus AI.
It feels like we're in one of those sorts of prisoner's dilemma situations.
It's exactly the phrase I was going to use. It is a prisoner's dilemma. Like it's the natural equilibrium.
This is just this moment in time, isn't it?
Precisely. But I think that particular asymmetry is just this moment in time. But I think that the speed at which LLMs and AI is now, there'll be, that bit might settle, but then another thing we haven't predicted comes on top.
Well, that's absolutely it. I mean, that's the thing, and I often am caught saying this, but I'll say it again. Often I notice when we have these conversations, the dominoes are starting to fall, right? And people are constantly saying, well, what will happen when 10 dominoes fall? But at that point, all of this will happen, but you can't predict in 10 dominoes time. You can maybe predict the next domino and maybe the one after that if you're extraordinarily prescient, but frankly, it's so hard to predict what will happen next when a entrepreneur can now build a website and everything else he needs with code because the AIs are so good. Does that mean that all of the developers that are no longer needed become much more affordable? Does that mean that every company now has their own developer, or are they all freelance developers? There's so many possibilities that could come from these tools happening, and they're still growing and getting stronger and better, and it's really impossible to predict.
Yes, yeah, that's the other thing. It's definitely impossible to predict. It's just so many different factors at play, so many different moving parts now.
Yeah. But speaking to this current moment, everybody seems to be sort of either being honest or not so honest. There's varying degrees of honesty around how much they're using these tools, which is creating this weird marketplace where managers aren't sure, the employees aren't sure whether they can talk about it. And so, it came out the other day, actually, just like me and my the managing partner here in the US, we were talking about, so we're a video production company, obviously, and a brief will come in to us often, can you cost up how much this job is going to be? So we use our price sheet to figure out how much this job is going to cost, this many camera operators, this many sound operators, like producers, this many edit days, whatever, right? And it's always been a bit of a guessing game as to what are the other companies charging and what's the amount that they're going to charge, and how much am I going to break this down on the cost sheet? Do I use like nebulous terms, or really kind of say the music will cost this, the ingest day will cost this, the edit day will cost this, color grading will cost this? You know what I mean? You can really, really break it down. Anyway, I always will put a document like this into ChatGPT before I get into the, doing the actual work myself, just to see, can it do this task? How well can it do it? And most recently, it's just, obviously it's getting better and better at doing these tasks as it's gotten better and better with mathematics. And it kind of struck me that, okay, I'm putting this brief into ChatGPT. The client has probably also put this brief into ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And ChatGPT does an amazingly detailed breakdown of how much this thing should cost in its estimation and what you should get for that cost in its estimation, much more detailed than what we put out. And I had to have the conversation with Catherine where I was like, the client's probably going to be doing this at some point, and they're going to expect these prices that we're seeing here from ChatGPT, and they're also going to expect this itemized. We can't just say it's 5 edit days. We'd probably be better off like saying what ChatGPT is saying, here, breaking down the edit days into specifics so that they can then say, we don't want that bit, like cut that because we can't afford that, and I wonder how much that, we're in this weird, again, prisoner's dilemma, arms race, clandestine practices, as everyone's sort of secretly using it on the side and then pretending that they know and nodding sagely and saying, yes, well, actually, Bobby and Catherine, you should, maybe we could take off the grading day and the color mix and the sound mix on top of that, as if they know, and we'll be like, oh, well, where did you get that information from?
The next thing would then be whatever appears on the search for ChatGPT is what then becomes the industry standard or the norm. So I know that what do you do when everyone has the same information? They know exactly what they should be paying, and they can in a more detailed way than you could have produced because they use ChatGPT. So it's arms race because like the whole asymmetry of information, like you know what it costs, and like, well, here's my profit margin, and but now they can have that information immediately. And let's just be honest, we know exactly what ChatGPT, so let's just work from there.
Totally. And it's like behind the scenes, my chatbot is debating with your chatbot. The second thing that this conversation stimulated for me, another thought that came again from the last podcast I did, it was sort of the closing point of my boss, but he said, what keeps him up at night is not so much job loss, but rather the speed with which people can now do their jobs. And he's like, the problem isn't the job loss, it's that we can now, or it's pretty obvious that soon we'll be able to do twice as much work in half as much time, which means that we'll be paid half as much, but cost of living is going up. So how do you square that circle? And it sounds to me like you're sort of saying similar things. You're like, the developers are doing so much work, you can't even, they're not accurately assessing how much work you can do. And there feels like there's a relationship between what he's saying there and your own industry.
Yeah, so the recalibration of the amount of work that people can do. At the moment, there's a lag between how much we can do and how much is expected. That's going to change, and it's going to be like, this is the amount, this is the speed at which things get deployed now. This is the new normal.
I feel like a theme of this podcast has been kind of recalibration. I think if I was to sum up our conversation, it's about recalibration. Now we're going to get to the fun bit of the podcast, Ben. We have gone around the houses, and it's been a fun bit of exploration. But it's never meant to be existential, this podcast. It's meant to be practical and pragmatic. So this is the structure bit of the podcast where I would like to get your quick tips. We're trying to bring these viewers back from the abyss that we took them to the edge of there and back into the fun everyday use cases of AI. So quick tip number one, Ben, what have you got for me?
Quick tip number one is you can use it for any kind of recipe idea just by what's in your fridge. You can take a photo. ChatGPT allows you to upload photos. You can take a photo of the content of your fridge, and it can tell you exactly what you've got and how much of it, and then come up with a recipe idea.
I've heard of that, but have you ever done that one? Tell me, give me an example of the time you did that.
So I go through a lot of things. Every time I try and buy fresh fruit, it always goes off before I use it. So I took a photo of it, and it recommended soft shell tacos because it was lime. It was like chicken, tomatoes, a little bit of onion, just your basic fruit and veg that you like always have a bag of, but then it always goes off. This is a good way of creating soft shell tacos from scratch, just using ChatGPT.
Bloody great quick tip. That's a great quick.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Let me paint a picture. You have taken a photo of your fridge. You've uploaded it in ChatGPT. You didn't like the first answer it gave, or it hallucinated, and it said, it mistook the lime for an apple. Right? This is my first time using it, and I'm just like, this is so crap. Like, it's just bloody. It thinks that lime's an apple. What do you do? What do you say back to me?
Am I talking to ChatGPT, or am I talking to the person who did the?
I'm the skeptic. I'm the cynic. I'm not even skeptical. I'm cynical.
I see. Well, you can nudge it in the right direction. It'll certainly understand. In fact, that'd be a good thing because obviously the more that you talk to ChatGPT, you are training its language model. So if it has got something wrong, or you can always correct it, and then it'll know from now on. If you're a skeptic, remain skeptical because it's not going to be, double check. But there's nothing wrong with skepticism. A healthy bit of skepticism, especially since ChatGPT can hallucinate. So yeah, if you know what a lime is and an apple, don't be told otherwise. All right, trust this.
That's good. That is a good piece of advice. Okay, I have another pushback, right? But like, why wouldn't I just type it into Google, like lime and whatever's in my fridge?
Well, you're absolutely welcome to. It's not going to be as tailor-made though. Any dietary requirements, it can tailor-make its response absolutely in a way that Google can't. Google can only provide you a website that might consider it. This is a tailor-made
Well,
response.
it's the bespoke nature of it, the context, and the being able to synthesize the information and feed it back to you, which is what makes it so powerful, isn't it? Okay, I'm sold. I'm going to try that. Great tip, Ben.
Perfect.
Great tip. All right. Tip number 2 is the your own personal superpower or hack that you've found works well, that you're kind of, might be a little bit off piece here.
Well, prompt engineering is the future. If you found a way to incorporate it into your work, usually means that you found a specific task that you can outsource to a language model. If that's what's happened, you have to spend some time refining your prompt. Prompts can be like 500 words or so. It could, but you have to be really specific because obviously you can run the risk of hallucinations and whatnot, and it making getting things wrong.
Yeah. It's interesting though. I have been realizing that some form of prompting is the future of how we'll interact with just everything, whether it's prompting by voice, prompting by text. I mean, potentially even prompting by thought. It's all going to be, how do I stimulate this AI to give me what I need?
I mean, where do we go from there? When we meet people, you sort of gauging, oh, that guy's a smart guy, or this is an intelligent girl. Like, are they intelligent, or are they just? Do they have a chip in the back of their head? Does it make any difference? Like, would you love somebody any differently if you knew that wasn't entirely them? It was them plus a chatbot. The extreme performance in the pub quiz is actually the result of some really efficient ChatGPT work.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that is it though, isn't it? Some really efficient ChatGPT work will be a skill in itself, I would argue. I would contend.
Yeah.
We're certainly starting to talk about dominoes further down the line right now. But my short answer to that question is, speaking and listening skills are going to be the soft skills of the future. Like, how effectively do you communicate with others? How kind are you? How tactful are you? And I don't see how an AI can replace those skills fundamentally, person to person, in when you're face to face with somebody, not between screens, but actually in the flesh. Wouldn't it be a lovely irony if this technology actually necessitates more in-human interaction because you need to know whether or not this person is the person that they claim to be?
Yeah, I mean, that'd be the nice thing, wouldn't it? That would be like if we all came full circle and actually finally technology and actually the great scatter then brought us all back together. It's a nice thought.
That, Ben, is why this podcast is called It's Not the End of the World. So with that in mind, let's move on to tip number 3, a fun or unexpected use case.
Okay, so I went through a phase of so you've seen people using ChatGPT as a counselor and people thinking, and I think that's a really, really dark road to go down. Like I think that we have to understand its limitations, and it's trained to feel like a human, but it's really not, and it's not a substitute for that. So as much as you can.
Well, I must admit I've used it for such use cases. So much of the time, some of the work we do requires precision, right? I'm realizing more and more, because obviously AI is prone to hallucination and you really can't be sure if what it's saying is true or not. But I'm realizing that so much of what I do in my work, in my personal life, I just need reassurance. I just need a pat on the back, and just for it to say, that's a good idea, move forward with that. And then I'm like, great, I'm moving forward. And it's actually me just moving forward that's important. But a lot of the time I get stuck and I start ruminating and overthinking something. And it's sort of the same with my mental health when I have used it for that reason. Hey, I'm feeling like really uncertain about this thing, and I'm feeling kind of like worried and anxious, and this is the problem. And it will say just all the shit that you would imagine. Oh, yeah, it's perfectly natural that you'd feel that way. Absolutely. Of course you feel that way because X, Y, and Z.
Yes, and that specific bit, like it's of course you feel like that. Yeah, you're looking for like Oh, right. I'm not a complete weirdo, or I'm not alone, and not
Yeah.
like,
Humans want to feel validated, and they want to
yeah,
feel seen, you know, and that's it. That's all people want, and the chatbot does that in spades. And it comes back to the society trying to recalibrate, right? Like there needs to be some level. There is a use case here, and I don't. And absolutely, it can go off the rails. We've all heard the horror stories about when it does go off the rails, and
yeah.
there's someone's committed suicide. Some guy thought he was founding a digital religion, and he was walking around the home in his robes that from this AI god, and his wife was like, I think something's gone wrong here. But if we could just become cognizant of that, that's one of the dangers of this thing. We need to be aware that it's gonna encourage you, and kind of it could lead you down a weird path, so just be mindful of that. But there's also a positive side to this that can be very helpful for people that are getting stuck in a certain type of way.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But I don't think we're the bit where you've got to try and separate the good from the bad. We're only just getting there with social media. I think there's now a bit of a pushback, and like this ultra connectivity, ultra that we thought was so good, is like, oh, this has been really harmful in certain areas.
Yeah, dominoes started falling with social media, and we all thought it was going to be this amazing thing, and now we're all burned. And I think this is the thing, though. I think people are transferring their experience and their resentment towards social media onto LLMs, and it's important. It's important to note several things. One, that LLMs are not AI. Like AI is obviously a multitude of other technologies that it encompasses, but also that LLMs are not social media. They're a completely different beast. And again, to come back to my optimism, my optimistic take is that LLMs will help me be on my screen less, because I can do the work that I need to do quicker, so that I don't need to be on my screen. I can be in the real world trying to experience it.
It's funny because I think that there's a big push now for more real world experiences, where we thought that, Facebook and whatnot could have been a substitute for human interaction, that it was going to make us more connected. We have kind of learned a lesson now. It's kind of maybe, well, optimistically, turned a corner on, you need human interaction, and your phone and your screen will not give you that. It's getting back into the real world. Being siloed in your home office isn't ideal. You need to get out there. So maybe it could be the push that we need.
And I see that amplified even more by the generative AI video and images that are just flooding social media. The clear line between this being not real, not worth your time, is clearer than ever. Right? Before it was blurred. Before it was like, oh no, but I'm connecting with people, I'm seeing what they're doing, and I'm also engaging with politics, and this has got to be a good thing. But actually, we're already starting to go, oh, maybe all this over engagement with politics is not such a good thing. But now even more, we're saying, well, we can't even trust what we're seeing. Let's get off it. Let's go and be involved in the real world.
Yeah, maybe this can be the tool that we thought that social media was going to be. Maybe it can take the burden off.
In an ironic twist, maybe, but equally, there's few people out there, as far as I can tell, that actually are. The optimists and the pessimists are pretty much even at this point, I would imagine. Perhaps the pessimists are louder than the optimists, as far as I can tell, if I look at my social media. However, this podcast is all about trying to remain in the middle. And so, Ben, I would like to thank you for joining us on It's Not the End of the World, Everyday Use Cases for AI.
Thank you, Bob. It's been an absolute pleasure.
And to our viewers, we will see you next time, unless it really is the end of the world. Thank you.